So first of all, I start off with a cup. Doesn't matter what kind of cup you use, you don't have to use a cup, just a circle that is about the size you want for your doll's head. Then use that as your measurement of relative size for everything else. So your body is about 1.5 heads. Your arms and legs should be around about the length of the head and the body. So once you've done all of that work, you can then build yourself your prototype. Now this one, the project for this week. Nice and simple and kind of back to basics. And it's all hand stitched. You can, of course, use the machine, but if you're doing a smaller size, it's very difficult to get those tight curves and lines correct. So I've decided to go into a bit of a production mode, and I've taken my original plan and rated it down by 1/3 and then doubled it, so I've got different variations in sizes. And I've gone through my collection of fabric scraps and basically cut out a set for each. I've got 4 or 5 different sets for each size, so I've got a nice kind of selection to go with. So once I've done these, I'm then going to work on some clothes to go with them. Unlike this one being my prototype, it's got all different fabrics all over the place. So these ones I've kind of kept with one colour for kind of the backs of things, and then another colour for the palms and the face. So it's got kind of some variance in the design, but it's pretty much the same thing. So right, so for the front of the head, think about the old design. So I've got here a nose coming out. So to give that a bit more kind of strength when you're packing it, I've actually pinned on a little bit of extra wadding and some more fabric just to give that some strength as it's sewn down, so that hopefully it won't need as much packing to get the shape right. Okay, so that's the first batch of sewing done. So the legs, the front of the arms and the head or the face. So something to bear in mind with this design, because I've got a thumb on the hands, you've got to be aware of where you're going with this. So on this angle, I've also cut a right angle here so that the shoulder sits in a bit better. So you need to bear in mind where everything fits together, and then you're sewing it backwards, so that just confuses everything even more. So for the face, in order to get this nose shape as kind of neat as possible, I've trimmed back the packing quite a bit and made sure to take off the very, very top of the packing here, so that, and I turn it through and push out. I need something just to give it a bit more oomph. That will sit out quite neatly, so I've got a decent kind of nose shape. I won't need as much packing, as much filling when it comes to that stage. So now I need to move on to the next stages. So normally I wouldn't do the feet at this point. There are a couple of options for how the feet finish, as it were. You could simply just sew them together like that, so you've got a flat bottom. You could try and lay on the sole, which I find very difficult, hence why that one's quite so wonky. Or you could fit it in so it sits down in the foot. So normally I try and do that once it was stuffed. Because this fabric is fairly thick, this is a kind of felted upholstery fabric, so it's quite sturdy, and I'm using some PVC fake leather for the sole of the foot. So I don't really think that one of these techniques will work. That will work better. So what I've got to do, I've measured the soles of my feet that are just short of the length of the foot here, and they're about 1.5 inches wide on this, so which is equivalent to the width of the foot, of the leg. So what I want to do is just fold it in half and just take off the corner here. One, so that's out the way for the sewing, and two, so that when I set these in, they are pretty much even in shape and size. So I've sewn together and turned round, or turned through, all the limbs, and because this fabric is quite sturdy and felty, it's not sitting flat, but that will sort itself out as it gets stuffed. So things to remember when turning through, particularly things that are quite long, is use something like a dowel. Don't use a pair of scissors because you're more likely to poke a hole in the bottom somewhere or rip out some stitching. And go slow and steady. Don't fight with it, just let it happen on its own really. So, when it comes to filling, I'm using this fibre fill, which is standard kind of toy stuffing, which is safe for children. It's fire retardant, so it's safe for children. So something like a foot, because you've got kind of the top of the foot as well, make sure to push out the stitching so the top, the kind of contour at the top is there. And the best way that I kind of worked out is to kind of open up your stuffing slightly and then make it into a quite loose bundle and stuff it in. Now this is where a dowel or a large knitting needle come in quite handy. So you want to push it all the way down and then be sure to push it out into the toes. Excuse me. For this I'm not going for a really very firm stuffing. I'm just going for kind of a gentle stuff, as it were. So I prefer it to have some movement to it rather than be quite hard, like that. So that's my body. And here where I've got the extra fabric, I'm just going to tuck that over. So I've got a neater edge to work with. So I'm only going to do it either end, because it'll get in the middle if I do it. It'll get in the way if I do it in the middle. And on both sides. There's a bit of tucking to do here, but I'll do that when I start sewing. So that's kind of flattened out the bottom edge like that. So now I'm going to take a leg, and again, if you've got different fabrics on the back and front, you might need to think about this, but I don't. So, and the option when doing this is either to circle around the limb so it's got some kind of body to it, or sew it down flat so it's got a hinge. So that's your option to make. Because this is quite chunky, I'm going to keep it chunky as much as possible. So I'm going to line up this side, tucking in there with the side of this leg, and just pull that round and use this pin I've got sitting here just to hold that in there. Do the same on the back. So this way, when you're stuffing it, you can also continue to add some more stuffing to the legs if you want to. So I've got a good shape. It's not nice and solid. I haven't got kind of sections sitting there like peas in a pod. So now I need to put in my neck. So, easiest way to do that is to line up the front with kind of the midline of the body, about there, and just sticking a pin to catch the fabric like that, and then using that as your guide, tuck in. So I've got the main construction done, now I'm working on the joints. So I'm just putting a couple of stitches in for the elbows and knees. And for the elbows, I'm obviously going in through the sides through the seam, so you can't see the start or finish point. But for the knees, you have to go through the middle. So just tucking in here, catching hold of a little bit of fabric, coming through the loop, and then coming back straight down through the leg so that that knot is held inside. It's not quite so obvious like that. Now I'm only doing 2 or 3 stitches of about 2 or 3 millimeters going in either direction. Right. So I've done these in smallish batches because it's easier to manage. So here now I've got 10 lengths of blues and blue, black and white, 10 lengths of kind of green and shades, and 20 lengths of red. So hopefully when that blends, sort of like that, something like that roughly, it's going to give it a nice kind of colour variation, so it's not all one colour. In 3 lines down the back here, and middle of the head. So this is going to be a double. It's going to be 2 parallel lines. So I've actually got a parting here, and then one single line kind of at the halfway point, and then another line going all the way around the top of the head. So that should give a nice kind of body to the hair. So what I'm going to do with these strands, first of all, is blend them up. So unbundling, and it's difficult to get to be random, difficult to be totally random. So I'm not going to attempt to try and work it out in any way. What I'm going to do is bundle them together and then just kind of shuffle them around a little bit so that I can get some level of variation between the bundles. That kind of blends the shades together as much as possible. Because there's a lot of red, there's a chance of there being a big bundle of red somewhere. Hopefully this way it should randomise them a bit more. Yes, it looks messy and it looks tangly, but that is the nature of this kind of process. So I've now got a bundle of hair. What I'm going to do is tip them onto the side and kind of tease out whatever comes out of the side of the box. So I don't necessarily see the colour, but it's a random selection. So randomly selected first piece. So because this can be a little difficult when there's lots and lots of strands, you've got to work in a logical pattern. So I'm going to work along this midline here. So I'm going to come to the right of this kind of top seam. Okay, so I've got my kind of hairband effect going on here, and that has stabilised this top line. You could have put, I have put a line of glue along each of the other lines of hair, but that would have been more visible. So covering that up gives it a nice finish, and also kind of a border between the kind of the bangs, the fringe and the rest of the hair. So I've taken off the majority of the fringe because I don't really need all of it. So I'm just going to twist that out of the way and use one of my offcuts just to tie it, keep it tidy. Now start working on the hair. And there's an awful lot of hair here. She's got a very decent mop. Goes pretty much down, the longest bits go almost to her feet, so I can do some nice layer work. So what I'm doing now is just pulling this out so that I can see where the very shortest strands are. So my short ones are about here. So I'm going to cut around about that point. Now I've still got some here that's slightly shorter but not by much, so that is my main line to go for. And now we're going to start pinching up the next layer. And using that as my new line, I'm going to come about half an inch shorter. So I'm building layers. The hair kind of layered slightly. It's taken a lot of the weight off. There's a fair amount of weight on there which is causing the head to really tip back, so it's still tipping slightly but not as much. So there's still plenty here, and having the extra lines on the back mean that you can do pigtails, you can do any kind of styling you want with this one. Some where you just have kind of a ring around the outside, it really limits what you can do with the hair. So, you know, if you're feeling particularly adventurous, then by all means. I've just used a couple of braids just to hold it all back and control it, just for now. Although, if I decide to sell this one, she'll be sold like that, so it was neat to start with and then let the kids do all the weird things they want to do with them. So now I'm working on the face. So I haven't yet decided what I'm going to do with the fringe. My previous two, I've gone for a kind of a really wild kind of dobbin look, or a quite short, fairly controlled one. So I don't know. Okay. So I'm just going to go round the clock face. Fill this in until I literally can't get the needle through. I always do this at the very end. That way you can get a better idea of kind of the character and where the eyes and the expression needs to be. Start going back the other way. And now I've got to think about a name for this one. If you have any suggestions, please stick them in the comments. Because next week we're going to be coming back and doing some clothes. Just as an extra thing for my 5th Wednesday, so I'm outside the pattern. So just extending this project a little bit. So I'm going to continue with this and then give you some pictures when she's nicely finished.